So how many of you saw The Secret, right? The so-called documentary, okay. Well, that's interesting, by the way. The number fades year to year, right? You would have got everybody a few years ago. So this popular idea is not new. When a lot of people got it for the first time because of The Secret, oh, this is new. It dates at least to 1860. When some people were running around teaching the number one popular idea of personal growth, personal development, whatever you want to call it, which was and continues to be essentially, if you go out in your backyard and you sit under a tree and you think the right thoughts, a Porsche will fall off of the limb and hit you on the head like the apple hit Newton, and all will be well. Okay? Now, the core idea gets kind of new wrappers and attachments all the time. It gets spider webbed too. You know, there's Lily. So you can have that idea, plus if you have the right thing you hang from your left ear and the right creature that sits in your doorway, those things combined will do it. There's the chance. There's if you go out in your backyard, but you sit on a particular mat while you are under the tree and you face east while you think the right thoughts, the Porsche will fall off the limb. So there's a little twist to this thing all along, but it has made its way through the late 1800s at least. I haven't taken it back any further than that, but through the turn of the century all the way to right now. And it's somewhat significant that, certainly from a, which is not what we're here to talk about today, but from a marketing standpoint, it's very significant that this core popular idea has survived from a time of very little information accessible to people and relatively low education levels amongst the population, all the way to a point when there is unlimited information available to people, and we're a pretty well-educated population. And this core idea won't die, okay? And remains popular. So Napoleon Hill's quote was, "Thoughts are things." And it's as good a summation of this idea as any. And of course, that's utter horseshit. No, they aren't. Thoughts are thoughts. Because if that was the case, you could, instead of ordering a pizza, you could just think a pizza. And you would have a pizza. And if you do that about 22 days in a row, somebody's going to notice the odor, get the body, and take you out of your apartment on to the next life, because you will have starved to death on the belief of thoughts are things, right? Earl's quote, which is where we're starting on page 72, is, you know, we become what we think about most. Well, yes, but no. Because at certain times, so if you are a 14-year-old boy, based on this principle, you would very quickly be a girl. Okay? And actually, you wouldn't even be a complete girl. You would be a set of breasts, right? One of Dean Martin's old jokes was, the reason I never wanted to be part of a magic act is if we saw a woman in half, I'm getting the half that eats. That was Dean's old joke. It's also a horse racing joke, right? If you're a partner in a racehorse, I guarantee you, you get the one lame leg and the part that eats. That's what you get if you're a partner. So yeah, we become what we think about most, kind of, and more as we become adults than as kids. But in and of itself, this core and popular and enduring personal development idea is nonsense. Okay? I began to figure it out because I was exposed to it early. And when you are driving around in a really old bad car, not by choice, and your passenger seat is full of think about cassette tapes, and the situation is not getting any better, you have to begin to question, how much of this thinking do I have to do before something gets better? And it actually turns out, as I've often said, it doesn't really matter what your attitude is if one of two things are true. You never can get in front of anybody who might give you money in order to use the attitude on. Then you might as well have the crappiest attitude in the world and indulge yourself, because having the best attitude in the world isn't going to make any difference. Or you have no significant aptitude. So you can have, so there's a bunch of broke salespeople running around, still are today, who are subscribed to this core popular idea. Oh, if I just fix my thinking, everything will materialize and be okay. And they've never taken a sales training course, so they don't know how to sell. So they have a great attitude and they have zero aptitude. Or if they have attitude and aptitude, but they don't know how to replace prospecting with something that works, so they actually have an opportunity to get in front of people who could and would give them money, ability to buy and willingness to buy, then they can be Norman Vincent Peale reincarnated, waking up every morning with just everything they see is a glass half full, you know. Oh, the dog took a shit on the carpet. Oh, wonderful. It was time to get a new carpet anyway. Oh, right. I mean, no, no, the dog took a shit on your carpet. I mean, what is what is, right? So the best completion of this I have is that behavior matters. Implementation matters. What we do matters. Now, doing with a really bad psycho-emotional collection of things about what you are doing is not particularly productive, but having the great psycho-emotional collection and not doing anything is not particularly productive anyway. So my new favorite quote is from whoever the philosopher is who wrote the just film of the year, Hitman 47, which happened to be running on cable, and I'm a clicker, so. He says to whoever, I mean, I didn't watch the movie long enough to give you the plot. It's some bald guy he looks like you bald, okay? His uniform is a gray suit and a red tie, but he's bald and he's running around killing people. He's some kind of professional assassin. I don't know the rest of it. But in explaining himself, he says, which is what I wrote down, we determine who we are by what we do. Okay? Now, you could complete that and say, not by what we think. Okay? That doesn't get us all the way to who we are. I mean, we determine who we are by what we do. We determine what our business is by what we do and make it do, not by what we think. This is why Bezos has his 2 pizza rule for meetings, because all the meetings in the world aren't doing. Meetings are thinking, and that only gets us so far unless now somebody does something, and they do something useful and productive and beneficial. I mean, I said for years at seminars, and we've all been guilty at some time in our life or at some seminars. I think Carlton said it the other night. Somebody takes 5,000 pages of notes at this thing, and they never look at them again, right? And at home, there's a room of notes that have never been looked at again. Well, that accomplished nothing, right? 1 page of notes of 5 things you might actually do is much more useful. So you asked me this morning, how do I take notes? Because you have this whiz-bang mind map thing, and there's Cornell learning, and there's all sorts of stuff. I'm old and set in my ways. But, so I don't really want to I don't even want to look at the mind map thing, let alone, that's not to discredit it. It's just, but what I didn't say to you that I should have said is how I take them is less important than the fact that I generally use something from the notes I take. That's really probably what's most important. And I try not to bother taking notes. I know the minute I hear it, I'm not going to do it. So like you'll go to a doctor and the doctor will want you to take, oh, you got to get these 8 tests because we got to find out if you have an enlarged thyroid, prostate, something, right? And the question nobody asks that I always ask is, okay, so if I get the tests, what are all the possible outcomes? And then what are all the possible things that I might do as a result of this outcome? And if I now determine I'm not willing to do any of those things, I don't want the test. All right? Why? Same thing with notes. Why do I want notes that I instantly know, shit, I'm not going to do that. Right? There's no way in hell. Right? Ted Broer, who was on with us, the 10 Foods Never to Eat on the Peter Lowe event, for 5 of the 9 years I was there. Ted's talk was the 10 Foods Never to Eat. Right? And great talk, and Ted was very effective in the front of the room. And he kept trying to give me his stuff, I said, Ted. I said, I heard the talk once, right? I mean, like any fish creatures that feed off the bottom of like catfish, you can't eat them. I said, I'm eating catfish, so, I mean, the one city he bombed in was Birmingham, Alabama. He couldn't figure out why, right? I'm going, Ted, you told them they can't drink Dr. Pepper, they can't eat moon pies, and they can't eat catfish. It's the whole damn diet. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? That's lunch at the gas station in Birmingham, Alabama, man. I mean, you can, So, I mean, I know in advance I'm not going to do this. Why do I want the list? Right? So what you do is pretty important. And so in the period of time, 35 years, that I've prowled around a lot more than I acknowledge on the personal development side of the equation, I came to it differently than most people come to it. And in much the same way as I came to the speaking business differently than most people come to the speaking business. Most people come to speaking as an escape from some other business that they were in, and they think that it's all going to be about the glamour of standing on stage and speaking. And I came there to get money. I didn't really care about the rest of it. I mean, whatever we got to do. But I came to empty pockets somewhat efficiently. That was my focus. And I very quickly decided that if I was going to spend any serious amount of time dealing with personal growth in any way, shape, or form, the reason I was there was to find things to do. Most people come to find things to think. They go to retreats, they sit in that living room with that whack job woman and go out and do the magic trick on the hot coals. By the way, I have the instructions for that trick from a book on magic and carnival magic from 1903. Now, it may predate that, but I have the exact instructions on how to rig the firewalk. So very few people have to go to the hospital. You may remember, what was it with Tony, last year or the year before? They had an incident where a whole, like 5 or 6 people they actually burnt their feet and they had to go to the hospital and it made the news. And, Well, when you saw the film, there were no proctors to move them along. So you got to move. You can't like march out on those things and stand there and take selfies. And that's what happened. That's why the people went to the hospital. They're stopping standing on the hot coals. That's why it's called a fire walk, stupid. I mean, it's not called a fire stand, because mind over that don't work. There's one Hindu guy who sleeps on a bed of nails every night, who can walk out there, stand there, and take a selfie. You, Barbara, say, you got to move your ass along, right? And so I came to it all looking for things to do. So I listened to it very differently than most people. If I listened to Jim Rohn, I wasn't listening for the way most people listen. I'm listening for the one thing out of the 5 hours of happy that actually is a thing to do, right? Not a thing to think. So that's my preface for the day is the way I think about personal development, personal growth, self-improvement, success skills, the way the 10 I'm going to talk about that I think have been most useful to me, the way they wind up in conversations with clients, not acknowledged that we are having a personal growth conversation. Any of you who consult or coach, you all know this is what happens. I mean, whatever it is you coach, and if you don't like this, you might not want to be in consulting or coaching. Because if you maintain any relationship with a client for very long, whatever, Halbert's language is clicks on the dial, whatever clicks you have on your mechanic dial, how to do advertising, how to do marketing, how to run a business, how to create a business, equity so you can sell it, whatever your core competency that you're selling, once you've run somebody around that thing 5 or 6 times, they either got it or they don't. Carlton kind of looked, he said, most of the people in this room could have got up there and given that yesterday. They're advanced enough and they've heard it so many times. And I said, yeah, but everybody likes to hear the old songs, You have to do a new one in the set, but really, everybody that goes to the Beatles impersonator concert, they're perfectly happy to hear, whatever the hell the Beatles songs are. I'm not a Beatles fan, but, and the same thing happens with me, right? Yeah, you guys know the clicks on the dial. That doesn't mean it's not helpful to be reminded of them, but you know the clicks on the dial. And so coaching and consulting in a business environment quickly devolves into really having personal development conversations that I usually don't acknowledge. It's not like I wave a flag and say, okay, we've shifted into personal development now because at $5,000 an hour, people don't want to buy that. But that is what happens. But I am always focused on the what to do about it, not the what to think about it. If you're going to sell it, the popular thing to sell is what to think, not what to do, because what to do requires self-confrontation. Did I do anything today? But it's much easier to end the day and say, well, did I think anything today? Yep, I thought something today. Put a check mark in a box. We had a winning day. I thought something, It's a much tougher standard. Did I do anything today? Nah, not really. So if you're going to sell it, it's much more popular to focus on the things to think, but we will focus on the things to do. The second, even sort of tougher part of it is I've come to view personal development as the development of the will to do what is necessary. I actually think that's the big payoff of being self-actualized, to use Maslow terminology, of being developed, is actually developing the will to do what is necessary. And now that backs into almost everything we talked about the prior 2 days. Are you going to sell timidly or are you going to sell aggressively? Well, that has to do with your will to sell aggressively. Right? Average salesperson, direct sales industry averages. It's another thing that hasn't changed. since the 1950s, by the way. So by direct sales, I mean somebody who is face-to-face, nose-to-nose in somebody's house or in somebody's office, their place of business, selling them something. W. Clement Stone's life insurance salespeople running around during the Depression, vacuum cleaner guy. That stuff, by the way, that stuff all still exists. It just may not exist where you live. So that's what I mean by direct sales. Okay? The averages haven't changed since the 1950s. So the first average is, the average is a deal a week. Okay? Vac guy's going to sell one vac a week. Fire alarm guy's going to sell one set of alarms a week. Life insurance guy's going to sell one policy a week. Home improvement guy, a fix your roof, is going to sell one deal a week. That's the average. Okay? And by the way, so if you base the economics of a direct sales business on anything better than an average of one deal a week, you're now in fantasy land. Because if you scale it at all, that's where you're going to wind up. Okay? Now, there's some guy who's selling a deal an hour, of course, and there's some guy who's selling a deal once a millennium. And I mean, there's a curve, you know, there's a bell curve. And you can keep firing the ones that don't sell and keep putting in. But when it's all said and done, it's going to be a deal a week. The other average is that they stop after the third no. So the average performance, behavior of face-to-face, nose-to-nose salespeople in any environment, including in your stores, Steve, in any environment, if they are across a desk, across a kitchen table, standing up in a booth at a home show to register, to get a contact file and get you to enter the sweepstakes to win whatever, it doesn't matter. If it's face-to-face, nose-to-nose, the average salesperson takes 3 no's and stops. That's the average. Which, by the way, if you did nothing else, if you didn't improve aptitude, if you didn't improve attitude, if you didn't improve script, if you didn't change anything but they have to ask a 4th time or they get shot or fired, and you policed it. You don't just incrementally improve results, you double them. And that's why the hardcore direct sales companies did things like make everybody unpack the entire box of cookware and spread it all over the floor. It forced the guy to ask a 4th time and a 5th time while he was packing up. That was top down. Okay? Is we can't fix his attitude. Life is too short. So we are not going to get this guy to really think much differently for any length of time than he does now. Yeah, we can blow breath in him at the sales meeting, but by Tuesday night, he's the guy he was before we blew breath in him, right? So we ain't gonna fix it that way. We can train him from now until Tuesday about why he ought to ask 4 times, and he might do it once or twice. So we got to have an environment where he has to ask 4 or 5 times, right? Has to. The heating and air conditioning business, the most successful companies, now on the form, when the guy comes out and does the inspection, the last thing that has to happen is there's 4 questions on the bottom of the form that he has to ask you, and you have to initial, right before you signed it, that he asked you these questions. Right? So now he has to ask you about the warranty plan. And the really good ones, of course, call, because it's an excuse to ask again. So now they have a phone person who calls, who says, Steve, this is Mary from, and our tech was just out there yesterday, and I just want to make sure. This is just quality control for us. The box is initialed, but I want to make sure. He did ask you about the 10-year warranty plan, didn't he? And Mary says yes, or Mary says no. And now, of course, well, it's okay that you didn't want it, but if I may, I want to make sure that you understand, but guess what? We sell some warranty plans, right? And Crow, this is all the way to you on follow-up, right? And so the average guy stops with 3, right? So he's not really very forceful. And the core objectives, like we really can't afford it, and he's in a house selling a high-performance stereo system, big screen TV, you know, an AV room system, and he notices they have outdoor plumbing, and they say they can't afford it, he stops. Okay? But if he really had the will to do what is necessary, he wouldn't even have noticed the fact that they have outdoor plumbing. It's really irrelevant. People buy what they most want to buy, and it's not his job to determine would they be better off fixing their toilet than buying my big screen TV. That's not his job. His job is to sell the damn big screen TV or leave a carcass on the floor after he's made his best attempt. So I came to view this as really about developing the will to do what is necessary. Will you fire Susan the minute you know she needs to go? Or, gee, we know Susan needs the job, and she's got a kid that was just in a car wreck, and her husband just left her, and her minor bird just died, and she's a good Christian, and she's been with me for 13 years. Do you put yourself through that, or do you just, Susan's got to go? Susan, pack your shit. Here's your severance check. It's been nice knowing you. That's about the will to do what is necessary. So that's sort of my preference for the day. If you look at page 73, this is an old piece of personal growth stuff. A lot of people use it. If you haven't seen it before, it's amusing in a way. It's the autobiography in 5 chapters. It's pretty much the way most of us do meander through life. What's most interesting and is not enunciated is that people keep repeating it with the same hole, but the hole has a new disguise, right? The same hole shows up, right? But it's made itself to look somehow just a little different, right? So like the guy gets it after the 2 marriages, prenup for the 3rd one. But he takes on a new business partner in a new venture, no prenup. Right? He fell in the same hole. Right? It was just wearing a slightly different costume. Right? He now puts the punctuality litmus test in place, and he won't do any business with people who can't show up where the hell they're supposed to be at the time everybody agreed that they were going to be there. But his CPA is constantly late with the work that needs to be done, and they're constantly doing tax filings on the last day before the tax filing has to be done. He don't fire the CPA and replace him, right? And 3 years from now, because the guy's doing the work at the last minute, everybody realizes the work is for shit, and the IRS shows up, and hey, you owe us $86,000 plus penalties and interest, and of course, it's the same hole, right? It just wears a different disguise. So it isn't just about those 5 steps. Ultimately, I walk down a different street. It's, guess what? The same damn holes over there on the different street. It's just got different colored flags in front of it. So you got to be really alert to your own falling into hole behavior. Okay? And we all have some. We have different ones. You know, different of us are dysfunctional. We have our pet holes, you know, that we've come to love, that we like to fall in again and again and again. And it doesn't take much disguise. I am not going to tell you what mine are, but I got them, and I am pretty cognizant of them. And well, I'll tell you one. And remember we said yesterday, everything's a double-sided coin, okay? So I'm really, under organized effort, whatever principle that was, I'm very organized, and I'm very disciplined, and I chart out how much money I intend to earn in a year, and where that money's coming from that I know, within a range. This thing is going to give me this. This thing is going to give me this. Some of it really is concrete and set in stone, so you can put that number down in ink, not in pencil. It's a reasonable assumption now. I kind of know there's going to be X number of copywriting projects, and they're going to average this. Now I have my deficit, right? So I have, here's the number. Here's the number I'm very confident is going to be there, and there's this gap, right? And I don't know where the money is going to come from to fill the gap, right? Now, here's the hole. Early then in the year, I say yes to shit to fill the gap. By the time I'm even doing the shit, the gap has taken care of itself with stuff far less onerous than the thing I agreed to in the first place that I needed to fill the gap. But now I got to do that because I agreed to do it, and I don't even need to do it. If it blew up somehow and there was just a crater where it was, it not only wouldn't it affect me in the least, the news would be good news, right? I mean, but here I am doing this thing I didn't need to do. Now, so 5 years ago, I dug about 10 of them holes. I'm down to about 2 a year, but I still dig them. And I even know I see the damn thing because I've done this before, right? I'm cognizant of my idiotic, asinine behavior of repeating this same thing, but I have not yet totally stopped myself. So there's one. I have a couple that are a lot worse that I am not going to talk about. But it would be good for you to know yours. What is this hole that I keep stepping in, and it keeps running back and putting on a slightly different costume to try and fool me, but it really isn't a very good costume. The hole shows up wearing the fake glasses and the nose and the mustache you can buy at the costume shop. I mean, it's not, you ought to be able, but there it is, and we step in that thing again. It's kind of good to know. So now into principles. It takes us into principle number 1, which is on your page 74, which is clarity. So I find with almost everything, most people are very unclear. They have not forced them, Gesundheit. They have not forced themselves to get precise clarity about anything. So on the business side, on the marketing side, even the smart clients who come, if you start to press them for true clarity about who is your highest value customer, one of the things we'll talk about next year, they get fuzzy. They can't, you know how you see in the crime shows, the witness will sit with the artist and describe the guy, and the artist can, and now he's got digital tools, so there's 10,000 noses, and they keep trying to nose until the guy agrees on the nose. You know that whole process, right? Okay? Most people cannot do that with their ideal and highest value customer. They can't do it. they start to get fuzzy, right? I don't know, it could be that nose, or it could be that nose, or I'm not sure what right? They can't do it. So to some extent, they are playing blind archery, or at least half-blind archery. Or like, it would be like me playing archery with my glasses off, which you would not want me doing like from here to a target on the back of the room, because somebody in here is going to the hospital with an arrow in their chest. And it probably ain't any of you. It's probably somebody hooked off to the right, because I can't see you without my glasses. Having seen you for 2 days, I have a vague idea of what you look like. But if I had to describe you tomorrow, the police artist would wind up with something kind of different, right? You should know this customer so that the police artist could get it perfectly. I would say, if you can't verbatim, if you couldn't write it as a play, the kitchen conversation at 2 o'clock in the morning of your customer, when he or she wakes up, they can't sleep because they're disturbed by shit, and they come downstairs carefully, trying not to wake the spouse. They turn on one little light, they get a piece of pie, and 10 minutes later, the spouse shows up because they woke up and they saw the light, and now the only honest conversation that has occurred in 6 months in this marriage now occurs. If you can't write that conversation verbatim that the people you sell to have, you don't have enough clarity about your customer, right? So most people have no clarity on the marketing side. They get fuzzy pretty quick. They default to statistics, not flesh and blood and heart and soul and dreams and nightmares. They default to stats. Well, they're the sweet spot, marketing language, they will often say, well, our sweet spot is, and then they will describe a statistical sweet spot to me, right? Well, they're between age thus and so, and they're college educated, but not advanced degree, and they're, And I'll have this conversation with really smart people, and they will still default to it, right? So, like, I'll ask a question, well, are they bald, and do they care? I says, I have no idea. I said, that's the point. Okay? See, you would fail the police sketch test about your customer because you got a bunch of statistics, but you wouldn't recognize them if you bumped into them in a parking lot, all right? I mean, that's, so, and this is with everything, right? So you start to pin people down for clarity on why they are doing a certain thing the way they are doing it. They don't know. Most of it is Zig's ham story. How many know? Really? Honest to God. Still? Really? I'll do the short. So I'll do the short. Young married couple, they're hosting New Year's Day for the first time for the family, and she's got to make a ham, right? And the husband sees her cut the ends off of the ham and throw them in the trash. And he goes, "The hell are you doing that for?" And she says, "That's the way Mom always cooked a ham." The guy says, "It makes no sense." Gets on the phone, calls Mom, "I just watched her cut the ends off the ham and throw them in the trash, and she's only cooking the middle of the ham. Why the hell?" And the mother says, "It's the way Grandma always did it. That's the way we do it." Grandma lives in Tuscaloosa. He's on the phone now to Grandma, right? She's like 92. She ain't coming. "I just saw, and I called Ma, and Grandma says, 'Well, I don't know why the hell they're doing it. I did it because I only had one pan, and the ham wouldn't fit in the pan,' right?" Well, this goes on in people's businesses and in their lives all the time, right? This is the way we've always done it around here. This is the way Mom did it. This is the way Dad did it. This is the way The guy I worked for did it. So guy becomes a dentist, opens his own practice. If he worked at a dental office before, and they, I don't know, put the instruments in the blue water, just like the barber, every night, then this guy has blue water in a bucket, and he puts the instruments in it. Of course, we now have lasers that clean all that shit, and you don't, but it's still going on. You go in places, and they're doing business like they were doing business, 20 years ago, because it's just been locked in people's behavior, right? And so clarity is the opposite of this. You have a precise as possible method for whatever you do, whoever you go after, however you price, and you can defend it rationally. That's clarity. Right? So, like I tell the story when I was starving, so I got this speaking gig for the Administrative Management Society of Kansas Association. Okay? And they're like engineer type people, but to our middle managers is what they are. I didn't know, and initially I didn't care. It's like, just go do your how not to be a robot personal development talk and get the check and get out of here. So these are people as useless to me as the proverbial third tit on a warthog. And I know it in 5 minutes. They all got pocket protectors. They all got little lead pencils in them. Every one of them's got the shoes with the pinholes, in the toe and the laces. They all got white socks. Their pants are all too short. It's like they all came out of a cloning machine. This is an after-dinner speech. It's one of the few after-dinner speeches where there's an open bar, and it didn't make any difference because these people, they could drink a fifth and still be sober, dull, boring, and have no sense of humor. I'm done. The little woman, the meeting planner, is like in love with me. And of course, there's 50 of these things. There's one in every state. I'm going to get on the phone tomorrow and I'm going to call everybody. No, Harriet, please, don't call anybody. If anybody asks about me, tell them I was horrible, please, because I never want to even be tempted to go pick up a check and do another one of these groups again. Why? Because I'm very clear about who my ideal person is. The lifers in this room are very predictable. If I get 50 of them at a speaking engagement, I come home and I know who the 5 are who we're going to have 10 years from now. I can tell you. Because I'm very clear on who they are in the first place. I'm very clear about certain things. I absolutely do. We joked about my standards in line, about the lines I will not cross for money. Most of them have been in place before I could afford the lines. And they have only gotten more rigid, but there's not new ones. I mean, so, I will not. I think I will die before all the changes compel me to violate I will not use the internet, personally. I'm happy to have it used for me to make all kinds of money. That's a different conversation. Right? But personally, I'm not going to use it. I have absolute clarity about it, and nothing confuses me about that. Yes, that's interesting. Leave me alone. I'm perfectly happy. Okay? I'm perfectly happy, for example, with real TV. So Carl and I have this conversation all the time. I says, put in the other house anything you want, because I only visit there. So it's kind of like being in a hotel. Okay? But here, where I am all the time, there shall be no Netflix. I'm perfectly happy. If I miss the show, I'll watch it in a rerun. I like real TV, and I'm happy. Why do I want to screw with my happiness? Plus, the shit we got barely works. Why do I want to add 6 more things that don't work, which is going to make me really unhappy? Time Warner's bad enough, you know? I mean, the thing freezes, you can't, I want 6 more things? No. Now, it's okay if you want it all. I don't object, right? I'm just saying, for me, I am absolutely clear about that. And every time somebody tries to move my line for all sorts of reasons, including, which we'll talk about, I won't be your friend if I can't communicate with you on Facebook. I wasn't all that crazy about having you as a friend to start with, to tell you the truth. I mean, you know, we sort of fell into the relationship. It's not like I went and found you, you know, and made a deliberate decision, this person's going to be my friend, so go on your merry way. Because between the two, guess what? So whatever it is, I think clarity is what you are constantly trying to get to about a subject, about an idea, about a method, a modus operandi, a litmus test for the people you let be around you, which we talked about litmus tests yesterday. I mean, I'm precision clear about mine. Most people are not so clear about theirs. They are situational about it like they are situational about their ethics. I'm not. I got a 3 strikes and you're out, and I don't care who you are. You hit the 3rd strike, it's very clear, there's a strike zone. Okay? You hit the 3rd strike, you're gone. I fired my mother. Okay? I mean, and I did the Amish joke with her just like I always do. That's strike 2. And then strike 3. Thanksgiving's going to be a little uncomfortable, but you got to go. Dad goes, really? Are you sure? I said, 3 strikes. And you, that was strike 1, right? Got it. Okay? So clarity to me is a big one. Now, so almost everybody goes, okay, I got it. That's really cool. And we need to be clearer. And the goals need to be clearer defined. And so most people hearing this half of the clarity equation kind of start to buy into it, right? I'll go home and I'll get clearer about this, clearer about that. Here's the second half of the equation. You have to be very clear about the implications and ramifications of the definitive decisions you make. And if you're not okay with the implications and ramifications, then you got to back up and change the core decision. So like if you have a litmus test about people on your staff, you have to be willing to fire your mother. If you're not, change the damn standards to start with. Because otherwise, you will make exceptions for Mom or Susie with the one-legged kid and the dead minor bird, and you will make exceptions. Pretty soon, the exceptions are the rule. See, the only real rules have no exceptions. You don't have to write too many exceptions to a border before you got an open border. It's a societal problem we wrestle with at this very moment. And if you look at individual exceptions, stories, you will make, all of us would make a bunch of exceptions. But pretty soon, you don't have a border, you have exceptions. And you got to decide, are you going to have a border or not, right? If you decide about clients, I'm not going to take any client who behaves X, exhibits X behavior, because it is predictive of future unpleasantness, right? But then you make an exception because it's a shitload of money, or, geez, it's February and I have this gap between what I know I'm going to make and what I want to make, and here she is, and she's ready to sign. Now, she is violating this thing, so predictively, I know 4 months from now I'm going to want to kill her or kill myself, but I'm going to take her, right? The minute you start doing that, the whole thing is toast. So, like ramifications. So, like, I'm very clear about protecting my time and my privacy above all else. Broader autonomy. But, so for example, I will not be on social media, period. Now, by the way, I know you guys can find me there, but you understand that ain't me there. That's GKIC there. I'm like Charlie McCarthy, you know, for that. I'm the little wood doll with the string in his back. That's what you're seeing on social media. Not only ain't I there, I don't see what they put there, right? Because I don't go there, and I damn sure I'm not going to be a part of it. Now there's a lot of ramifications to that, most of which are easy for me, right? Like, I don't get to see what people are posting and saying about me. That's an easy one because I don't care, okay? So somebody says, you're never going to see what I don't give a shit. As a matter of fact, that's a plus for me because I know more often than not, the overwhelming majority of people are saying unpleasant and critical things about me. So why would I want to see that? Because I won't change my behavior. No, this is like taking notes, right? So think about it. I know I'm not going to change my behavior one whit, no matter what anybody says. So therefore, why do I want to see all this stuff that everybody says? Because I'm not going to do anything as a result of it anyway. So therefore, that ramification's easy, okay? I'm not going to be on social media. I'm not going to get to see what people say about me. Easy. Hard is that friend thing. There actually are people, well, there's a lot of people who have been a part of my world. Some I actually like, who I would not mind communicating with every once in a while, just to shoot the shit, just to chat, just to share some information. But they will not be my friend because I will not be on LinkedIn or I will not be on Facebook. So I never hear from them again. And I know this is a ramification of my refusal. Right? I get it. And I have to decide which of those is more important to me. Because if I make a few exceptions, guess what? Pretty soon I'm making 6. Pretty soon I'm making 9. Pretty soon I'm making 12. Same thing with an inbound call. There's only 5 people on earth who can just call me. I occasionally give somebody a temporary pass. So like Nelson, who you all signed a card for. I just gave him all my personal numbers and call me at 2 in the morning if you want to, and, you know, only until you're well. Then I want you to burn all this information and you're right back to the old system. You want to talk to Dan, you go to Vicki, you book an appointment, you wait, etc. So I occasionally make one of those exceptions, but they are rare. So there are a bunch of people who will never talk to me just because they have to do that. Okay? I get it. That's a ramification of this decision. And I have to weigh which is more important to me. Well, if I went the rest of my life and never spoke to anybody, but I got to protect my privacy and my productivity, that's the choice I would make. And I'm very clear about it. if that was not the choice I had to make, then I've got to back up, change the rule, devise some sort of system by which I can let people at least appear to be communicating with me in the way they want to communicate with me, right? So I could hire somebody, that's one option, who sits there and pretends to be me, and people communicate with them. I mean, I could do that, and I would make people happy, because most people can't tell the difference. But no. So Bill Murray, somebody mentioned him yesterday, and they said, you know, you got to even get to him, you got to have his cell phone number. And I corrected him, because that won't work, because Bill Murray grudgingly finally got a cell phone, but only because it's the only way his kids will communicate with him. And he has surrendered to the kids, right? So he has a cell phone, but he never takes any other calls or makes any other calls from it. And Hollywood does not have his cell phone number. They have a landline number with an answering machine, and they got to leave a message, and Bill checks them who knows when, right? And I'll bet he does what I used to do. I mean, I just hit the delete button sometimes. There's like 3 messages. If it's important, they would have sent me a fax, right? And so Bill freely admits he has missed out on parts that would have been perfect for him, and that in retrospect, he would like to have done, just because he was so hard to track down and communicate with. And we got to start filming in Spain in 2 weeks, and so we're taking so-and-so, even though we really want Bill Murray. Now that's a ramification that he has made peace with and stuck with for 20 years. And he can name the parts. Now, if that was a ramification he was unwilling to live with, he's got to back up and change the other thing. Because otherwise, he's going to let this producer have his number, and he's going to have this producer have his number, and he's going to let this agent call him anytime he wants to. And in 6 months, all he's going to be doing is answering a damn phone. That's what's going to happen. So you have to be clear about both sides of this equation. My stepdaughter is of the age and generation, if you can't communicate by texting, you don't communicate. I now see her on holidays and talk to her when she needs money. This is, those circumstances will drive her to the phone, right? Holiday planning, nag me about going somewhere with Carla, or I need money, I have an emergency. Otherwise, I hear from Carla, because Carla will text. I am not going to text, and I am not going to take texts. Now, I have to be okay with the fact that what could be 2 times a month conversation is now 4 times a year. I have to be okay with that, right? So there's 2 sides to this clarity equation, and you need to be aware of both of them. Principle number 2 is a principle called value. This is a really unpleasant principle for a whole lot of folks. And it has to do with what really works and what really is, and accurate thought about what works, not what should be. I'm really not interested, and have long not been interested in philosophical conversations about how the world ought to work. It clearly refuses to work in the way it ought to work, because everybody has known how it should work for a long damn time. And a whole lot of people have attempted to make it work the way we all think it should work, and it doesn't. Okay? So, you know, the original Communist Manifesto of money and produce and housing and everything according to need, and contribution to the pot according to ability to contribute. Well, so everybody's tried to make the world work that way at least since Karl Marx thought up the idea. Go to any country that has actually tried to implement it. Cuba. don't work. Russia, don't work. Venezuela, don't work. Now, on paper, you can make a philosophical argument that that's the way shit ought to work, right? If you're a heart surgeon and you can contribute $1 million a year to the pot, and this person, for any number of reasons, has a GED and can only contribute 30 grand to the pot, we should merge the money, and you should both have the same apartment, and because your human value, your spiritual human value is the same. Fine, you can have a philosophical argument all you want. Just don't try and make the world work that way, because it pretty stubbornly refuses to do that. Okay? So the way the world does work is, first of all, you have to acknowledge that we are of vastly differing value. Even, so take any population, by the way, the pyramid applies, right, that we talked about, including here. So truth be told, you are of a different value than I am to our respective businesses, our respective families, and to society at large. And if you get outside of this room to a bigger population, the value starts to vary more and more and more, right? This room was able to pitch in more than $1,000 a head to charity. The room of the people getting the charity, they can't pitch in shit. So who's more valuable? Us. That's the way the world really works. The wait staff here is terrific, right? They're great. And some of them have 20-year tenure with me. And I like them a lot. But truth be told, they have not made themselves nearly as valuable to themselves, their families, their churches, their communities, or the world at large as I have made me valuable. Because if any one of the wait staff has a sister who suddenly gets diagnosed with some horrible disease and the insurance is capped out and the sister needs 100 grand for treatment, she can't help her. I can. So who's more valuable? Now what's important to understand that nobody wants to understand is everybody controls how valuable they are. At some point, no matter how bad your circumstances were, it's were, not are. Everybody's got to grow up, and they got to get busy making themselves valuable. That's principle number one. And if you want a good question at the end of the day or the end of the week for your little checkbox chart, you don't check off any boxes for did I think today. You can check off a box, did I do something today? And if you want to put a gold star on the box, did I do something that made me more valuable today? Do I actually know something I didn't know before that has value to someone? Have I strengthened a capability that has value to someone? Am I more willing to do what I need to do than I was last week? That adds value. Did I find a way to stock this company, on which all sorts of people depend, with higher value customers? That added value to the company, right? And on a business side, see, when you see something like what Amazon did yesterday with Whole Foods, understand at the core, see, that's on your little found money chart. That's expansion and diversification. That's not growth. That's not growing the Amazon business. That's adding value, hopefully, to the Amazon business through expansion and diversification. So Bezos is past just trying to make a buck instead of 75 cents. That's growth. He's long past that. He's into how do I add value every day. All right? So that's point one. Point two is, with a few exceptions, we are cared for by the marketplace based on how valuable we are. you can be temporarily disadvantaged for any number of reasons. But if you are long-term disadvantaged, it is a representation of the value you are creating for the marketplace. That's all it is. It isn't anything else. The marketplace itself is largely unbiased. It really is kind of unbiased to race. It's kind of unbiased to religion. It's kind of unbiased to height. It's kind of unbiased to appearance. And there's empirical evidence everywhere. Okay? So like, oh, fat people are at a disadvantage. Okay? The second richest fashion model in America is fat. They don't use that language, of course, but she is. Okay? She is clinically, significantly, and visually overweight. She's the second richest fashion model in the world. No, there aren't 500 of them, so you have to decide when you see something that is relatively rare, is the rarity about a discriminatory marketplace, and there can only be one of those, or is your immediate response, if there's one, there could be 100, and if I'm one of them, if I just model the one, there's room for two, right? So the marketplace almost entirely responds to value to it, not really to anything else. So if you can figure out how to record a record that 1 million people want to hear, whether you grew up in a ghetto or not, absolutely does not matter. We've seen it. Whether you're Italian, when Italians were looked down upon in America or not, doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's just, do 1 million people want the damn record? That's all that matters. The marketplace is reacting agnostically and indiscriminately. So this equation is almost entirely in the hands of each individual. Right? And not only do we need to know it, this is one thing we need to teach. We need to communicate to people that this is the way the world works, whether you like it or not. And if you want the world to work for you, you better figure out how to create a lot of value for it. So what Joan told Melissa was teaching this. The degree to which you get to be a giant pain in the ass to everybody in life is directly proportionate to how valuable you make yourself to them. So daughter, if you would like to go through life like me, being a giant pain in the ass to everybody, then figure out a way to be very, very valuable to a lot of people. And then you can do whatever you want. If you're not of much value, you get to do very little of what you want. All right? So value. A little strategy note for this, which is on your page 77, is you need not be the best at anything to create a lot of value. You can get there by combining, not necessarily top excellence. There are mediocre or past their prime quarterbacks in the NFL who still get paid a great deal of money and still get to hang around and still get to put the uniform on. And if the team wins the Super Bowl, they still get to put the ring on, because while their value as a quarterback is not A-level, they're really good at mentoring and assisting the younger quarterbacks. And that equation, okay, and they can't win a game, but they're so reliable that they won't lose a game. They don't make any mistakes if you have to put them in there. They won't throw an interception. They won't fumble. So if you got any kind of a running game, this guy is okay. The combination of those things raises the value above the one thing that we think about when we think about quarterbacks. Is he great or not, right? What's his completion percentage? How far can he throw the ball? How many games has he won? No, this combination of things starts to make him much more valuable. So like I will concede, always have, that the people who said all the time, mostly not to my face, but sometimes to my face, I can't believe you're on this tour. A few, I can't even believe you have a speaking career at all, right? Because I can list 500 people who are better up there on stage than you are. It's not about 500, but I can list 100. Yeah. And I don't even think I'm the best platform salesperson, although Zig said it's the best he'd ever seen. But I've seen platform salespeople that I think are better than me. But if you take the combination of everything, which is getting the right gig to be in front of the right audience, crafting the presentation for the audience, custom crafting the offer for the audience, delivering the presentation, closing, following up after the fact on the night. If you put all that together, there's nobody on earth better than me. Any one of them things, we can find people better. But you put all that together, there ain't anybody better than I am. And so making money for a host, you can't beat me. Every single person who has me on an event makes more money than anybody else has ever made them on an event. Even though I cost them more. Right? That doesn't matter. Even now adding the most recent fact that either you got to schlep your audience here or you got to pay for a private jet. Don't make any difference. I still make you more money because I'm better at this than anybody else, right? It's why certain independent bookstores in dollars per square foot outsell every other. And they got the same books. It's about the combination of things that they do, right? So we can create value, certainly without talent. Talent ain't necessary. It can be helpful. There's some categories where you kind of got to have it. Although George Clooney has gotten rich as an actor. He has no talent. Right? So if George Clooney can have an acting career, my argument is anybody can have an acting career. Right? And we could find a singer I could name in the same, but by and large, there's certain categories, art and entertainment, where talent's really helpful. There's certain categories where you have to have managed to get through college and get a degree because they won't give you a license to do what you do without it. Okay? So there are some requirements, but talent is hardly a developed skill. Yes, talent, no, right? But so you don't have to be great really at anything. For a 10-year period of time, pre-Tiger, the guy with the highest earnings as a professional golfer never won a major tournament. Never won one. But he was close more than anybody. So the earnings, when it was all said and done, he made more money than the guy who every once in a while won the tournament. Plus, he was a lot better at mid-level endorsements. So his endorsement money, by cobbling together companies nobody ever heard of, added up to more money than the top guy was getting from depending on Rolex and, Callaway and 4 or 5 big sponsors. Combining is pretty important. But one way or another, value really does control marketplace rewards. We'll do one more, then we'll take a break.
The name of the golfer?
No, I don't even remember at all. But if you take the 10-year window before Tiger Woods, okay, and you run your rankings, you'll find him. Okay. It's a male with a very nondescript name, which is it's like Norm Bablubowitz. It's like, it ain't like, Tiger. That sticks in your head. Norm probably still has his money, too. So 3 now is control. So the responsibility equals control, control equals responsibility formula. I figured out a long time ago. You can find it in my stuff dating back into the late 1990s. It's not a new idea. You've probably all heard it. It's important to understand it's a proportional formula. It's not like this. It's like this. To the exact extent that you are willing to accept responsibility over something is the limit of the extent to which you can exercise control over it, and vice versa. The extent to which you are willing to control something is directly proportional to your ability to exercise responsibility for it. Okay? And they are proportional. So if you shun a certain level of responsibility, you lose control. Let's take something very simple. So it's not happening now, at least that we know of. But Trump is famous for always signing his checks. Yes, other people prepare them. Yes, there's a shitload of them. I have it on reasonably good authority. He does it the same way I've always signed my checks. He sits down at night, turns the TV on to something he doesn't have to pay close attention to, like a game, and he signs his checks. Got a lot more to sign than I do at any time in business. But why? Never been embezzled. That's why. Nobody's ever got away with a dime. Because you know, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. I'm going to go ask a question about this. Right? If you don't sign them, I can almost guarantee you, if you stay in business for 50 years or longer, somebody's going to steal money from you who had a grip on the checkbook. I can almost guarantee it. Right? So if you want total control over your money, there's one of the things you got to do. Right? You got to accept the responsibility to look at and sign every damn check. At peak, I had 42 employees. Not long, but I had them, and I had 20 for a while, and then I had 5, and but I had 42. Never went more than 3 weeks without going in on a Saturday and going through everybody's desk drawers, every closet, every place that they could stash shit. It's the only way you're going to know. Today, you got to go through their computer, all of it. Right? It's the only way you're going to know. Not a time did I not find a problem. Not once. I can't tell you the number of times over the years client has called and said, we just found out there's $300,000 worth of credit card installment payments that haven't been processed. Barbara has not been processing them. Why hasn't Barbara been processing them? Too busy. Got behind. Now you can't run 2 months. Customer's going to call. So we just don't run them at all. Or Barbara thinks you charge too much money. And you are taking advantage of these people. So screw it. I won't run the charges. They really paid enough after the first 3. So I won't run the charges for the next 6. I like people with Polish names. I'm not going to run the charges of people with Polish names. Every imaginable reason not to do it. I've heard secondhand, once, nearly firsthand. Jeff Paul and I were in business. Jeff calls and says, you're not going to believe this. I just found out we got $100 and some odd thousand worth of installment payments that haven't been charged for 4 months. I said, when's the last time you went through the freaking desk drawers of that nitwit? Well, I've never done that. It's great. Now you got a $120,000 problem here, right? Just because you left her alone. Well, who you got to blame for this? Whose responsibility is it to make sure the credit cards get charged? Hers or yours? Do you want control over all the payments being charged on a consistent and constant basis? Yes. Well, then you damn well better take a high level of responsibility. Businesses that don't mystery shop. Are you kidding me? Every time I left the office, I called just to make sure the phone was being answered. By the time I got to lunch, I'm thinking, we might not even be answering the phone. Let's check that. It only takes a minute. Today, you can do it without even leaving the table. I had to go to a payphone. You could just sit there and be rude and do it right in front of people. Okay? I mean, I had to excuse myself, But this is ironclad, right? So the degree to which you want control, personally, I want as close to 100% as I can get. Okay? You may be okay with 80. On some things, you may want 100. Other things you don't judge are critically important. You might be happy with 30. Figure it out. But then structure your responsibility appropriately. And forget, like we talked about, what should be happening. Again, how the world should operate, I don't care. How people should behave, we can't care. So I want as close to 100% control as I can get now over me being unnecessarily injured or killed out on that racetrack. I learned my lesson. To get as close to 100% control as possible, which you can't get to 100% because there's 8 other guys, and they're not Buicks, they're horses, and but you can get close, and it is in direct proportion to how much responsibility I accept. Do I check the lines? Do I check the hobbles? Do I pick up every foot and make sure the shoe's on? Because if it ain't, it's going to fly off. And guess who it might hit square in the head? Bubba. Right? Do I check each tire and make sure all the little things? So they sent the sulky to the tack shop to get a new tire on. It's got a brand new tire. Can't tell you how many times the assholes didn't tighten the bolts. Right? Check the bolts. Is it my responsibility? Technically, no. I pay a trainer. I pay a groom. I paid the tack shop. No, technically, it's not my responsibility at all. However, if I want as close to 100% control as possible over whether I'm going to get killed out there or not, I make it my responsibility. Right? Now, a lot of what we do, you're not at immediate and mortal peril. I get it. But it's either important or it's not. If it's important to you to have the phone in your business answered by the third ring or shorter by a human with a smile in their voice, if that's important and you want to control it, you'll have to accept a ton of responsibility for it. A lot, if that's important to you. If Disney actually wants you called a guest, not a customer, not a pain in the ass, they have to accept an enormous amount of responsibility to make that happen every single time. It bears a monetary cost to enforce that. Right? If you want your kid to say yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, you don't get to send them to etiquette class and then forget it. You got to accept a shitload of responsibility to make that happen. This is proportionate. I hate it. But I had it hammered into me by life and by a mentor who his slogan was, "It's all your fault." I remember a few years ago I got rear-ended down in a community close to here called Montrose. It's a big shopping district, and it is horribly congested. And I got rear-ended in a car accident. It wasn't my fault. I literally, technically it wasn't my fault. I literally was stopped at a traffic light doing exactly what I was supposed to do. And wham, some moron runs into the person stopped behind me and drives them into me. And not at 5 miles an hour, at a significant number. And I'm, of course, pissed and livid and all of that. And this old mentor's brother, we happened to talk on the phone the next day, and he said, well, you know, the accident was all your fault. You do know that, don't you? He says, first of all, you shouldn't have been over in Montrose 3 days before Christmas, all right? Because you know the place is 5 times more congested than it is normally, and all the amateur drivers are out. You should have had your Christmas shopping done long before 3 days before Christmas. That's number one, right? Second of all, you should have had your eye in the rear view mirror at all times, because you probably could have swung the wheel to the right and stepped on the gas and avoided the whole thing and let the car slide through the intersection and kill the next guy. So that's the second reason it's your fault, right? And he's right, by the way. Yep. If I hadn't been in Montrose 3 days before Christmas in the first place, I wouldn't have been rear-ended. Secondly, if I'd been paying attention, I've dodged 4 accidents that way in the last 3 years. Here they come, and the person in front of you, the lights turn green, and she's sitting there doing this, and the guy behind you hasn't noticed, and here he comes, boom, out of the way. They hit. So he's right about that too, right? And that's the unpleasantness of this whole principle. Is largely, yeah, it is your fault. I just had a long conversation with somebody. They got big teenager problem, to the point that, you know, they're spending a shitload of money on therapy, and they got the kid in the rescue program, and he has threatened suicide on several occasions now. And of course, he's being relentlessly, massively, social media assaulted. Apparently, 6 months ago or so, he asked a girl out. She didn't like being asked by him. All her girlfriends went after him. Now the boyfriends went after him. And he is the subject of Facebook. And he is emotionally unable to handle this. By the way, the emergency therapist said, 1 a day here in town, 1 a day, just like this. They're at least saying they're right on the verge of something. And I said, so how much monitoring of his social media activity have you been doing? None. Well, got bad news for you. I have no sympathy whatsoever for you about all your therapist bills. You created this. Facebook didn't create this. The other kids aren't responsible. He's your kid. You're the one who's responsible. So you abdicated control to everybody else because you abdicated the responsibility. Got to go in and go through the desk drawers, right? And of course, this is an unpleasant conversation to have with somebody that is a friend, but nonetheless, that's the way it is. The last thing about this control thing to remember, I'm particularly fond of this quote. Always keep in mind that few people around you have any serious plans that they are pursuing on a daily basis. All right? So almost everybody around you is not trying to do anything important. They're not trying to do anything significant. They're not trying to be productive. The last thing on their mind is increasing their value or yours. All right? You guys are going to Animal Kingdom. Here's what you won't see. All them animals, the giraffes, the wildebeests, the zebras, all of them. Disney's been incredibly successful at training them, except about one thing. They don't give a rat's ass whether anybody has a good experience, bad experience, buys another ticket, or comes back next year. The giraffe don't care. Okay? It ain't even on his top 100. And they've sent him to traditions class, and they've talked to him, and giraffe don't care, right? So when you stay at the hotel, spoiler alert, these are really domesticated animals. I mean, it's a giraffe, but when you look out your porch, right, the thing is shaped like this, and the animals move around, And what makes people happy is if every kind of animal is in front of their room on a regular basis. Okay? So they tried training. But the giraffe would say, look, you got to go here, and then you got to go over here so these people see you, and then you got to go here so these people see you, and the giraffe, went. All right. So they moved the food. They moved the food. You will see people out in little safari outfits and jeeps, and each animal's food, they move it every half hour, back over here again. And of course, the giraffes follow the food, right? Well, this is everybody around you. This is it. There was a whole thing about, ownership mentality. It came right after, I think, quality circles and before something else. Oh, bullshit. You're never going to get ownership mentality in anybody except an owner. And then it's an iffy proposition. Okay? If you think you're going to get ownership mentality and people who work for you, they're the friggin' giraffe. Okay? This is what you're trying to do. This is not what they're trying to do. The only way you're going to get them is to move the food. Okay? And they are in your way a lot of times. You have to engineer ways that they are not in your way. You can't fix that about people. You've got to understand they're the giraffes. They're the wildebeest. He don't care about ticket sales. Bob Iger can talk to him, do meetings with the wildebeest all he wants about ticket sales. And people come back and pay more if you get this much closer to the thing where their balcony is. Wildebeest goes, shade. I want to be in the shade, right? The lions, when you go on the back behind the scenes safari, right? They get them to tell you how they have engineered that environment so the lion will lay out on the rock closest to where the safari jeep passes. Because left to their own devices, particularly on hot days, welcome to Florida, okay, the lion lays down where the water is, or he goes back in the shade. They need him right where you are. I'll tell you the secret. It's a fake rock. Inside, it's air conditioned. The coolest place there, they got a remote. Up comes the coolant in the rock. For the days that they have actually cold days in Florida, it's heated. Okay? So the lion now think about control and responsibility. So the Disney people say, we want total control over where this damn lion goes at any time of the day in this natural-looking habitat so nobody thinks we're running a zoo. All right? How do we get 100% control of the lion? We have to accept 100% responsibility for where the lion plops his ass. That's what we got to do. How are we going to do that? Well, we'll air condition the rock. Perfect. Doesn't ruin the experience for you, except for the fact that now I've told you. Okay? It doesn't ruin the experience for anybody. It's like perfect. And the lion's happy. He's got an air-conditioned rock to lay on. Everybody's happy. Okay? But if they deviate from that formula on the responsibility side, they lose a proportionate amount of control. Same thing for all of us over everything.